right, well, I think I'll get underway. So, kia ora koto, welcome everybody. It's good to see you all joining. And as I start talking, more of you will join, I think. Yeah, it's great to see you all. It's a nice sunny day here in Christchurch, so that's good. I thought what we do is the normal sort of have a few sector updates, hear the perspectives of different people. And the purpose here is to get out of our own bubbles, our own zone that we know really well, and hear from other people who maybe have a different perspective. So we'll do some of that. And then I thought we could do some breakout rooms and have some discussions and have a chance for people to get to know each other a little bit virtually. So that will be the format. And also I'd like to have, if it's possible for you to email me with your thoughts just about the future of the group. I'll go into this in a little bit after some of the sector updates, but just in terms of things like, I think this is fulfilling a valuable role, and that's what people are telling me. But I'm also conscious that once a week is quite often. So I'm quite keen for feedback from people. You know, we kind of developed this as a response to an immediate, urgent crisis that was happening. It was unfolding. Now we're kind of at a different stage. We're, you know, probably going to move into another stage soonish. Like, what does that mean? I really love what this group has become, because there's actually 200 of you on the email list, and you represent a huge variety of organizations. So I think it has a purpose and a value, but I'm just wanting to reframe in terms of how often it's meeting and if it's covering what you're hoping it can cover. Yeah, but I think there is value. So to start off with sector updates, I actually have a quick one, because Craig, who's on the call, and we've been, I think, due to just brainstorming and seeing a need, and partly as a result, for me anyway, of these calls, hearing different perspectives, hearing people are going through similar things, we thought it would be an opportune time to add something of our voice to what's happening, in particular for not-for-profits, community sector, charities. So we've actually been collaborating in the last, how long has it been, Craig? Only a week or a couple of days, really. But we're
a week.
Yeah, it's about a week, and it's come together quite quick. So this is just sort of advance notice of something that we've written together, and it's getting to the end now. I think, you know, we've kind of compiled some thoughts. So I just wanted to alert you to it, that it's coming out. We've called it Charting the Future. And what we're really keen to do is approach it in a proactive and positive way, but also ask some hard questions and be willing to engage at a deeper level with sort of systemic thinking about what's going on. So I just wanted to alert you to that so that you knew something's coming. And we'd appreciate if you read it and like it, the help with sharing it, because we're hoping it can stimulate more discussion and more thinking. Craig, did you want to say anything about it from your perspective?
No, I think you've summed it up really nicely there, Stephen. We are being a little bit provocative on a couple of things, because I think my experience in dealing with a lot of boards is actually this is the time to be quite provocative and look at some of the sacred cows in an organization to make sure that we still have a herd in New Zealand that is in good health overall. Yeah, we make no apologies for being a little bit provocative in there.
Yeah, that's right. Great. And also in the conclusion, we've kind of said, we hope that you disagree with at least something we've written here, because we don't want it just to be a, oh yeah, tick the box, that was interesting. We actually want to get people thinking, get the brains going, and hopefully we can build on it and go elsewhere. So that's just a brief plug for something that's coming probably in the next week. I imagine we'll get it done and we'll send it around.
Just an answer to Teresa's question, is it a proposal to government? No, it's not. But really what we're trying to do is to get all of organisations to focus a bit more on some of the fundamental points of running a good organisation and their reason for being. And actually through that, I think it's something which will possibly resonate with government in organisations that are focused and are well controlled.
Yeah. Yep. So we've whet your appetite now. You can be watching for that. Then a couple other people had some updates. I'm hoping Tessa and Sarah, Tessa Vincent and Sarah Doherty can do a double act here, because there's an event coming up next week, which I know that they're behind the scenes working on. So do one of you mind outlining what that is and how people can maybe put the link in, how people can register for it?
Do you want to go for it, Tessa?
Sure.
I think you've got something there from Sue, is that right?
Hi everyone. So I'm working for Sue Barker as a charity lawyer and researcher. And we are one of the 4 organisations who are organising an election hui next week. So it's on Wednesday, the 10th of June. And we have a political panel lineup from all of the major parties. And I think it's going to be a really good event and opportunity to ask questions and seek, I guess, input and your own ideas on election policies that will be announced over the next few months. So that's next Wednesday, 10th of June at 4 p.m. till 5:30 p.m.
And just to add to that, hui, one of the 4 as well. The others are Convoices and Trust Democracy. Thanks to Todd Foundation for some support to make it happen. Hui on the Facebook page are running a poll up till 5 p.m. tonight, where you can indicate topics that you think are of most importance or urgency. So if you want to have a say about what gets discussed during that panel, I will put some links in the chat, but it will take me a minute, bear with. Yeah, and so you need, it's free and all of that, but you need to register through Humanitics, and then you'll be sent the links for joining. So again, we'll put that in the chat. And while I've got the microphone, one other update from Hui, and that's just around that survey that's circulating, hopefully widely. Hopefully you've seen it more than once through your various networks. You know what it's about. It's just looking at the impact of COVID right now, and results will be, we expect to be able to share them early in July. And we're also working to make sure that the results can be shared as an open data set so that others can draw on the information to support their work. And just a reminder that that's a partnership between Hui Volunteering New Zealand, Centre for Social Impact and Philanthropy New Zealand. Can you just wave your hands if you've seen the survey at least? Awesome, job's getting done, yay. Send it on too through your networks, really cool. Thank you.
Great, perfect, thank you, Sarah. And maybe you can drop the link to that in the chat as well. And I'll put it in the email that goes out. I've included it in the last few updates. And as I keep saying, that if you see things like this, if you send them, I can put them in the emails that go out to the wider group, because there's people on the call, but there's a lot of people who are receiving the emails and reading them and able to participate. So that's good. Now, Lisa Foster, I'm just wondering if you wanted to speak to your point, or do you just want to put it in the chat? Because I'm happy to give you the floor if you wanted to talk about your question to the group.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to it. I think it's a bit easier. It's just a question from the Neurological Alliance. So I'm a member of Neurological Alliance and the Carers Alliance. And it's just from a health perspective regarding the charity sector. There's obviously key concerns going forward, how people are going to manage from financial position and in other ways. But what would be the community collectives ideas for the next steps for this group, going, looking at that challenge? I know obviously Stephen's put forward the article, and we've had the open letter to the Prime Minister. We have a letter that will be going to the Prime Minister regarding carers, which is going to be endorsed by the Neurological Alliance. And I actually work for Rare Disorders New Zealand. So I look at the particular vulnerable population dealing with uncommon disease types. So it's just a question around that, what's the next steps in regard to that? kind of push from our sector towards equity and assurance that we have some input financial support.
Great, thank you. So I think what I'll do is, if we can keep that in mind when we go to the breakout rooms and have that as one of the points that's discussed in the smaller groups rather than in this bigger group. And I'll move on to Dennis Parker. Dennis, you're unique because you sit on the trade aid board, so you're sort of in the social enterprise world, but you're also involved in a number of different charities. So I've just asked if you can give a perspective of what you're seeing.
Okay, thank you. Well, I've really found this very useful, being part of this group and listening. I have to translate a lot of the concerns because as a social enterprise, trade aid are not dependent on funding, but when you get past that, our issues of how we fulfill our purpose are very much the same. So I'm a governance and management support person in various organizations, which include different sectors, but basically it's pretty much around not-for-profit, social enterprise, and for charities. So here's a small update on what's going on for trade aid, which many of you have heard of, but what goes on behind the scenes for an organisation. We have 26 stores throughout New Zealand and have been around for about 40 years, but the stores are really only not even a third of our turnover. Who's drinking coffee today? Many people, coffee drinkers? If you've bought coffee from Hummingbird and Lafare, then we've imported it. We are a fair trade registered organisation and the only one that can import fair trade certified products into New Zealand. So therefore that's where a lot of our customers go. So there's chocolate, food, and the crafts that we import is mainly through the shops. So sure, the lockdown was a major issue. Overnight, we had to close all of our shops, and then we put a struggle into deep concern as regards, well, how do we sell our products through supermarkets and through other types of shops? And from March 24th onwards in April, our sales were less than half, and we're talking $20 million turnover, less than half than what they were before. And we're expecting a gloomy outcome for the future. But what we've seen is that there's a change there was a beginning of a change in what the perception of consumers of what they're buying, and the notion of ethical purchasing is more of an issue now than what it was before, which we think is quite grateful. And we've been, I'm not saying this is going to continue, but our sales in May were actually 1% higher than what they were a year ago, which just we're staying. You know, well, is this because of pent-up demand of things, people not doing things in April? We really don't know. Our shops opened in early May, and of course the sales were down there, but it's overall we were better off. So planning for the future is really quite difficult because we know that the trends are negative. We look at the number of redundancies happening. We're having to look at all of the staff we employ here in regards to what we're able to continue with. We're expecting long-term trends from overseas to be continuing to be negative, and what's going to happen in the local economy. So it is just a huge amount of uncertainty. Online purchasing was a small part of our business. It still is a small part of our business, but it is much bigger than what it was before. So we expect this to grow. We have a total staff and volunteers of 600, which sounds like an awful lot, but majority of those, if not almost all, are volunteers. And volunteerism is struggling at present. The demographics of our volunteers are quite challenged in that they are often older people, dare I say more my age group in the 60s. And, but we also have a lot of volunteers who are able and capable, but they have specific disabilities, so they're not able to hold down full-time jobs. And so we cater a lot of opportunities for people to fulfill work obligations, knowing that they're doing it for a good cause. But this is going to be a major challenge for us in the future. So when we think about communication of what we're doing around social and community issues, in the Slack group, I wrote some observations and ideas. And I toyed with the idea is that maybe we should have a stronger lobby group. It's not one of my particular strengths, and I'm not sure how much traction would get with a lobby group. And I know that the letter that was sent on behalf of many of our organisations was a really valuable thing to do, and we need to do more. But I think that as a charitable organisation, advocacy may be another avenue. Now, advocacy and charities is an oxymoron in that there is a legal issue with whether you can be a charity and be have advocacy, and particularly it's even more of a problem for us because a lot of our advocacy is around fair trade. But nonetheless, within those bounds, I think that being able to increase the message we have to the public around the purposes of why we as an organisation exist is the opportunity, knowing that people are reevaluating how they, dare I say, how they consume. And, you know, in many respects, we want to move to a post-consumer society, but these are the important issues. So we think that this is a time to have stronger communication to the public and specifically to our customers. And we think that for other organisations who take this approach, we may be able to find some common ground to spread similar messages, which when that gets into the media, then that's how we could have a voice. So that's not to say we should do this and not for lobbying, but I think we need to do both. But there needs to be some level of coordination or some level of agreement as regards what stories we can tell. And just briefly, I have a number of other clients in very different sectors in cycling and sport, waste recovery, funding for charities, media and communications, and a science, what I call a science technical infrastructure. And they're all struggling with the same things, is how can they reimagine how they operate? Now, all these organizations are social enterprises or charities. So they're all trying to fulfill a purpose. And so the negative side is, it's a major problem, can we survive? And the positive is, okay, is this an opportunity to reimagine how we fulfill our purpose and what we can do to be able to, I guess, be successful. So there you go, there's an update from me.
Perfect, thank you. That's very helpful. And I think you framed it really well. As we're gonna go into breakout rooms shortly, and I think there's some real challenges there for people to reflect on and feedback on. Craig, did you have another update that you wanted to give?
Just quickly, Stephen, thank you very much. Just a shout out to a couple of things. One to the External Reporting Board, and I know that's you know, pretty dry and painful for most people because it's talking about financial statements, but they've actually been doing some really good work providing some guidance on their website. So any organisation that's in the process of preparing its year-end accounts or about to be audited, you will notice that this will be a more difficult experience this year because of things exactly like Dennis has been talking about and the challenges that organisations are facing and their future income and future viability. There's some really good helpful resources on the XRB's website now for your accountants and auditors and anyone involved in that area. So I'd suggest having a look at that. Service performance reporting. If you are a large charity, a tier 1 or a tier 2 charity, you were going to have to do service performance reporting for the first time this year. There's a proposal that now will be delayed a year. So for anyone that finds that too much of a hassle or too hard, it looks like that's going to be delayed for a year. It's an optional delay though. Anyone is able to do service performance reporting from this year anyway. And what we see is that a lot of the best practice charities, if I can say that, in terms of reporting and communicating through their annual financial statements, are already doing service performance reporting anyway, because it's the best way for them to report their impact to organisations. I've been arm twisted to do a seminar on not-for-profit governance. So looking at challenges, threats, trends and opportunities for not-for-profits for the Institute of Directors. And that will be on the 16th of June. Because it's the Institute of Directors, I think there's a small charge for it, like $10 or $20 or something. They don't seem to be able to do anything for free, even though their speakers do it for free. But there we go. If anyone wants to hear me be provocative and have a bit of a rant on some things, yeah, join me on the 16th of June. Again, for anyone of an accounting bent out there, the Victoria University on the 17th of June is running a webinar that's really available, I understand, on COVID-19, the implications for financial reporting and audit. So if that spins your wheels, that's on Wednesday, the 17th of June from 1 till 2, and it's free and on Zoom. That's me, Stephen. Thank you.
Right, perfect. Thank you. Lots of helpful updates. And maybe if you can send me links to some of those things, then people can find out about it later. So just before we head to the breakout rooms, there is a Slack channel going. So it's actually been getting a bit more traction in the last few days with people posting links and comments and thoughts, and Dennis posted and had some feedback on things. Darren Ward just posted, he was at an international NGOs meeting. So he posted a summary of what he had observed there. I'll probably pull that out and put it in the email summarizing this call, but just to let you know that that Slack channel is going. I think there's about 50 people on it now. So it's a way to communicate, to connect, and hopefully look for these opportunities for collaboration. And if you haven't done so, if you can jump on and introduce yourself in the welcome tab, then that's a great way, you know, to tell your story and tell people about what you're up to. And so what we're going to do next, I know some of you have calls to move on to and things, but for those who are here, I'm going to split you into 3 different groups. And hopefully you won't know the people. You might know them, maybe from meetings here on these calls. But it's a chance to just, in a smaller setting, have a discussion with other people for about 10 or 15 minutes and talk about really whatever you want to. I'd like to steer you towards 2 things. The first is what Lisa was asking about, and just what you're seeing in terms of response and next steps. And that dovetails nicely with what Dennis was talking about in terms of advocacy and, you know, how do we make our voice heard and things like that. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, I'd love it if you're able to discuss a little bit about this group as well. And what would you like to see this become? How often do you think it should meet? Is it fulfilling a role? Clearly you're on the call, so the people on right now must think it's of value. But going forward, is it something that I plan to continue it, but just I'm thinking maybe it becomes like a once a month catch up that people actually put in their diaries and make time for, because I feel like maybe every Friday is quite frequent. But I'd be keen for your feedback, so that would be great. Maybe more regular is what people want. I do notice that in the past we've had 50, 60 people on the calls, and now there's fewer. Maybe that's because I've made it too easy to watch the videos afterwards and you know, summarize what we talked about. So maybe the efficiency there, but I'd be keen for your feedback anyway. And I know some of you have to drop off, but what I'll do is send you to these breakout rooms and you can have some discussions. As always, if one of you can be the scribe and report back, that would be really helpful, because then we can put those summaries in the emails that go out to about 200 people now on the list. So I'll just go ahead and create these breakout rooms. And I think I'll just do 3 of them. So hopefully that's, because I know some of you are about to drop off. So that should be about 4 or 5 in each room. So if you click join, you can introduce yourselves and have a chat. Thanks, everybody. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Well, hopefully, as usual, you got to meet somebody new or was able to connect with people that you already knew and have some discussions. So what I'd like to do now is just run through each of the 3 groups, if whoever hopefully was appointed as the spokesperson. And if the person who does that, if you can email me a summary as well, that would be really helpful, because it saves me having to go back and listen and type it up. So if you can email that through after, that would be great. So group number 1, or a group who wants to go?
Well, I can go from group 3.
Great, perfect. Thank you, Ros.
We got to, well, it was funny because it was Sarah, Patrick and I, and we've all worked together, so we all just laughed. But then into our group popped Adrian Tapau, and we had the most amazingly fun conversation with Adrian, who is a real raconteur, and I wish he spoke more in the bigger group. So we had quite a broad-based discussion on all sorts of things. So I'll just give you the headlines. We were talking about how NGOs and government departments are in a bit of a risk-averse spin. We talked about the power of cross-sector groups to be able to speak on behalf of everybody, because a lot of people are afraid because they're risk-averse to actually speak out. And so cross-sector groups are a really good way for messages to go, like the letter that you sent to the PM, where nobody in particular can be picked on by risk-averse public servants. We'd also talked about the issues of people speaking out. And I know that quite a long time ago, there was a really good research project done by Sandra Gray on gagging via contract. We just talked about the fact that that's still actually, we know of these things happening where government gags by funding or controls by funding what groups actually do when they've actually set up with a community mission, and there's a problem of that mission being undermined by government saying, we give you money, therefore you do this. So we talked a little bit about storytelling is really important, because we were thinking about how we can protect civil society freedom, and the best way is to get together and to tell the stories that we hear, so that we know as a group about what's happening, and then we can share that our thoughts on that also as a group. So we talked about that. So it was quite a broad-based. It's amazing how much you can talk about in a short period of time. We talked about also it would be great to be in a place where we can grow understandings between businesses and NGOs, which we think aren't so good at the moment. But now we're in a place where actually those kind of conversations could happen. And then we talked a bit about changing the way POKI funding is sent out. So we had that conversation. And then because we had 25 seconds, we had a quick discussion about what to do here, which was majorly fast. But basically we thought we should meet fortnightly for a while, and then monthly, because we find the updates really helpful. And if we only met once a month, the updates are just, this group have become like a spoken newsletter, whereas the way it's going at the moment is a nice pace, and you get the chance to hear from all sorts of people. But we also think we need to put more energy into talking about how we network.
That's great. You fit a lot in 25 seconds.
You talk at the speed of light. You've got no idea.
That's awesome. I need that group in my life. You could solve so many things.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
We're also very good at quizzing, so that's good.
Yeah, we all quiz together.
That's good. Really good to hear. Well, thank you. It's important for me to hear that feedback too, because it's hard if you're the one kind of coming up with things and not knowing what the rest of the group want to do. So fortnightly, yeah, let's see what the other groups think as well. But I think that is an achievable type of thing. So thank you very much. That's awesome. All right. So the next group, there was a group I think it had 6 in it, and another that had 5, I think.
I took some notes from our group. I think we're group 1, so happy to report back. We had Lisa Foster in our group, so she spoke a lot of the time about Rare Disorders New Zealand. So didn't know that around 300,000 people in New Zealand have what's classed as a rare disease, and they're currently running a campaign called Fear for Rare. So I guess she's just encouraging everyone in this cohort to look into their campaign and promote it. Then we had Karen and Anne introduce themselves and their work as both Anne, a tax advisor, and Karen, who is currently on leave but working on aspirational community-led development. And then Mark Allen spoke. He's from Community Waitakere and is an executive officer there, and spoke about some significant changes happening in the Auckland Council and an emergency budget process over the next couple of weeks, which he may be able to elaborate on if anyone's Auckland focused and interested in that. We had a brief discussion about whether we should have a kind of more formalised advisory body on behalf of the community and voluntary sector. This is a proposal that Sue Barker and myself are looking at in more depth. This morning we spoke with some people in Canada who run an advisory body over there, and we ran out of time, but generally people, I think, were supportive of this. So really keen for more feedback from this group on what that advisory body to government would look like. We didn't get to these sessions, but yeah, I would agree personally on the fortnightly front, if that's any use.
Great, perfect. Thank you. That's good. Sounds like you got to know each other as well, so that's awesome. And how about...
I'll just jump in here and just, I just really do need to do a plug about Hui and other sector peak bodies, because in terms of advisory groups to government, can I really encourage you to work with groups that are already there and amplify the ones that are squarely in the community sector of the community sector. Professional advisors are absolutely vital to us all running our work well, but to privilege the voice of community organisations that already do this advisory, advocacy, sector cohesion type work, please don't set up new things. Please bring your skill and ability and influence and awareness to those groups that are already doing the work, because otherwise it just splinters yet again and yet again. You know, those with more power, more education, more skill in certain areas of influence end up being listened to, and those who are closer to the coalface again end up missing in amongst all of the noise, and the government ends up confused again about who does it go to and who does it listen to and who is the sector. So I feel really concerned hearing yet more conversation about more advisory groups, and yeah, it's just, can we just stop doing that in New Zealand? Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, and that's certainly something I've been contemplating with this group, whether this should become something more, but I've kind of deliberately put the brakes on it because of those reasons, that we don't want to dilute what's already there. And the beauty of this group, I think, is it is very informal. It's just people coming together from all of the different bodies, and we hear perspectives from everybody. So yeah, I agree with you. And I know there are discussions happening that some of you are aware of. So yeah, we'll just watch and wait and see. But happy to take it offline with you, Tessa, and have a chat. Yeah, no problem. We can talk through. All right, so moving to the vast group.
No one's going to volunteer because I think I made the assumption, I saw someone writing and I thought, oh good, someone's going to do it. But in fact, he was writing down some other notes. So in the last 30 seconds, we couldn't agree on who was going to write, who was going to report back. So if I do a little bit, it'll be quite brief, then someone else can add another aspect. We had a conversation about the response and next steps. And I could summarize two perspectives, where one is regards how we give more value to the organisers, and in effect as regards the structure of how we organise together is an important aspect of being able to make things happen. And the one that the other one which I talked to was more on I think there are specific actions that we can take, which is along the lines of what I talked about in my initial presentation, and somewhere we need to do both. And so it's interesting to hear what's been happened, what has been reported back, and your comments, Sarah and Stephen, as regards what I'd describe as well, I don't want to use the word lobbying, but basically how we influence. And I'm thinking that there is an important part for that, but we don't want to do that to the detriment of taking away the connection with people who are at the coalface. And that's one of the observations that I've seen within a lot of these groups, is I see some people who have got more policy roles are talking at a more conceptual level, and those who are actually doing the work are talking at another level. And I think the level of people actually doing the work within the communities is what we want to amplify. And then we also talked about, so sorry, that's part of just my comments back, but someone else can add. And then we talked about timing of the group, and I think there was a recognition that less frequent would be acceptable. No one was saying that we should have it every week. And when people are saying every 2 weeks, that sounds quite good. Now, does someone else want to add all the important bits that I left out from what we discussed? No.
No, it must have been a good summary. No one else jumping in? No, that's fine. Well, that's really helpful. It gives me some clarity as well. So I think that's a good idea to go to every 2 weeks. And I agree, if it went to every month, at least right now, it would probably get to be too long. So according to my maths, that would be the 19th of June that we would meet next. So I think that's what I'll do, is send a calendar invite, update people by email. That's what we're doing, and just go from there, see how it develops. It's always been, as some of you who are here from the beginning know, this started with my discussing with one person, hey, we should get 2 or 3 people together and see, talk about things. And then all of a sudden it became 50 people wanting to have updates, and then writing letters and things. So just has organically grown. So we'll keep cultivating it. Does anybody have any last things that they wanted to say? Otherwise we'll call it.
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to talk about the lobby groups. I agree you don't want to dilute them by having too many. And I also personally agree that the smaller ones are the ones that are missed out on. And quite a few years ago, on behalf of a charity client, I wrote a submission to the Inland Revenue Department about changing the law about donations, because you might recall that if people made a donation, if a business made a donation to a charity, they only got a tax deduction if they only gave no more than 5% of their profit. And also individuals were only allowed to give something like $1,500 to get a tax rebate, otherwise the rest of it was lost. And the whole crux of our lobbying was that it shouldn't be for the government to pick winners, because the really big charities often get the corporate money. But as I recall, we said the butcher down the road wants to support the local kindergarten, not the one that's having the charity ball when it costs you $500 to go anyway. And so we said, lift the donation rebate up to the profit of the business and let it be the maximum of the earnings of the employee. And that actually got passed. So all of you are benefiting from our submission. And that's where I think that when we're tackling how we get benefits, we go in through different routes. So one of them is through the tax department and the benefit from that. Another one might be through WINS, another one might be through local government, another one might be through central government. So we need to use all the tools in our toolbox, to use that trendy phrase, to get where we want to get, and not allow the government to pick winners, which is actually what I think they're doing at the moment, where they're throwing money at specific businesses or industries. If they're throwing it at charities, that's fine, but I think It's for the public of New Zealand to choose what they want to support, and we need the government to have policies and legislation to allow us to do that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. And it's nice to hear that there is change that's possible, right? If you advocate that things can change. Yeah, and part of the beauty of this group is that we can learn from each other. We can hear those sorts of stories, and yeah, I know I could learn a lot more about the politics of laying foundations to get policy in, because it's definitely not as easy as just saying this is the good idea and here's what you need to do. There's a lot of groundwork that has to go on. So thank you. Well, I think that's it. Thank you very, very much, everybody who joined. Once again, I'll put the video up, you know, on YouTube with a link to it. And if anybody has any links that they want to send, and if you did speak, if you don't mind, again, sending me a short bullet point summary, I'll put that in the email out to everybody. But otherwise, thank you, everybody, for joining. See you.